Hey everybody, welcome back. Today is your final day of Photoshop. I'm sure you're very happy about that. Starting next week, we will deal almost exclusively with After Effects. We will touch on Photoshop again and how it integrates with After Effects, but for the most part, the class will become an After Effects class. That's not to say that you are completely finished with Photoshop, though. You have a design project to do, your midterm project, and that will be almost entirely in Photoshop unless you work a little bit inside Illustrator, a program that we don't necessarily learn a whole lot about in this course. And what I have open here is the design project guidelines. This is available for you on Canvas under Files, so you can take a look at this in excruciating detail. So this is for the undergrad portion of the class. The idea here is that the big project in here is a one-sheet poster. So it's 27 inches wide by 40 inches tall and 300 pixels per inch. So it's a very high resolution image, and you cannot use any copyrighted material. So a little bit dissimilar to what we've been used to for the tutorials in the class, where we can just go on Google and grab any image that we want. You'll have to either come up with copyright-free material or create some stuff on your own. So you can illustrate things, you can do something similar to our Lightbox project, so long as it's complicated enough and looks good. That is a perfectly acceptable way to get around working with copyright. Additionally, if you have your own photos, you can certainly use it, but you'll find that there are a lot of issues when working in a very high resolution like this. Once you bring in like a still from a video, it's going to be incredibly small on your canvas, and once you size that up, even though Photoshop has good image scaling AI, it just tends to not look very good. So if you have artifacts and stuff, that's part of what we'd be looking for in some technical errors in your final project. So that's the big thing, but there are all sorts of little things that go into that one sheet poster. You have to create a logo on your own, and it can't be just out of the box font. So you can't use Helvetica and say that this is your logo. You can use your custom font that we'll be creating today, or you can illustrate a logo by hand. That's fine too. Additionally, there are these three other items. You only have to do two out of these three things. So a collector's ticket, we call it a collector's ticket, but really it's the size of a business card. So you could just kind of print on a business card the same elements that are in your poster, right? So you'll have to kind of reorient things. A poster is like a vertical orientation, and a business card is going to be a horizontal one. So you'll need to decide what parts get cropped, how you fit your logo in there, and how you fit any corresponding information in there that you need to have. You'll need to make sure that your text is large enough to read, but not so large that it messes up your design. There's a note on here about a 1/8 inch bleed area, and that just means that you shouldn't have any area in your collector's ticket that is essential in the outer 1/8 inch. So you can use your rulers inside Photoshop, and then guidelines from there if you'd like, to make sure that your text, which is the big thing, right? That your text does not go over into that bleed area. So this is a common thing with printers. If you're going to print a business card or anything on some card stock like that, that you don't want to put your text so close to the edge that it might get cut off during the printing process. So we're going to put that 1/8 inch bleed area. That doesn't mean that this area needs to be like white. It can be potentially. You could do a white or black border around it, but just make sure that your text or any very essential information does not go into that bleed area. So if you have a portrait of a character, you probably don't want to put their eye in the bleed area either, right? Or their mouth in the lower bleed area. And then there's the Netflix standards for display art. There's a PDF also in the Files tab on Canvas that will explain just what these things are. So you have basically everything that would be deliverable items to Netflix if you were, say, working for a distributor sending promotional items to Netflix for display on their apps and on their website and stuff. So you have to have a title card and a horizontal ad thing and then a vertical version. So if you've ever been on Netflix, you can see like it's basically like movie posters or movie covers that you're kind of scrolling through. You're basically doing that out of your poster elements, and then you see like a little thumbnail from time to time too. You're creating all of those things that would be necessary for Netflix standards. And when you pop into that PDF, you'll find all of the strict guidelines. So it has to be a very specific resolution for each thing. And you'll find that the thumbnail might throw you just a little bit since it's so small. What kind of information can you actually get across there? It's probably just the title and maybe a very small portion of your poster. Finally, here you see this optional t-shirt design. So if you would prefer to do this over the collector's ticket, that's just fine by me. But the idea here is that you would create a t-shirt that would be intended to be printed. So you can use Threadless or Redbubble.com, and you don't actually have to get it printed, but you do have to create the store, which is free, and then publish your item there. So you could potentially make money off of Redbubble. Redbubble has like set up your own store and create merch kind of thing, and all you have to do is upload your designs, and then people can buy them directly from Redbubble, and then you see a portion of the revenue. So if you create that stuff and you send me the link, you can do this instead of this. But the idea here is both of these things are print items, so we need to translate our poster from RGB and CMYK to just CMYK. So you'll do that already in your poster, going from RGB to CMYK or CMYK to RGB. All of the Netflix stuff is going to be RGB. And you have something that's specifically print as well. So we'll see how your colors translate and stuff. So sometimes there's a bit of an issue there. If you just switch the color space and everything looks fine, then you probably have no issues at all. But if you do switch the color space and you see that your blues turn teal or your reds turn kind of magenta, then you'll have to correct those colors using like adjustment layers and stuff. So hopefully this is fairly straightforward. It is a pretty big project, and we're not just going to jump straight into it. So you'll find on Canvas under discussions, there's going to be a thread that says pitches for projects. So you'll need to pitch your idea, like what kind of movie you're doing a poster for. It can be a totally fictional movie, or maybe you've done a movie in the past that you want to do a poster for, or maybe you plan on doing a movie in the future and you want to get a head start on promotional items. Any of that stuff is totally fine. You just can't pick a movie that already exists or use copyrighted material. So you could potentially say Leonardo DiCaprio is in my movie, but you can't use a still of him unless you can find it without a copyright attached. So that's probably like Pixabay. Pixabay.com has a lot of royalty-free photographs and stuff. Even then though, even at 4K resolution or whatever kind of resolution they have, it's going to be pretty tough to incorporate that as your main art in the poster. Now for the graduate students, we also have a design project, but the standards aren't quite as defined as the undergrad students because I don't know what you're doing specifically. So the idea here is that you must do a high resolution, high scale image, and you must do both an RGB version and a CMYK version of the project, but what you do specifically is kind of up to you. So it really depends on where your interests lie, but we want to be flexible with you in this particular project. So if you plan on doing a logo for a business or maybe your business, that's fine, but you have to find some way to incorporate it into a very large high resolution image. So perhaps that's some merchandise, perhaps that's something completely different that I haven't thought of, but regardless of what you choose to do, there is a separate discussion for the graduate students to pitch their projects, and you will need to tell me specifically what you plan to do as a high-resolution, large-scale image and a CMYK and RGB export. And the same rules go with copyright. No copyrighted materials in this project. All right, so if you do have questions on that, I totally believe that there might be a few. I will be available on Zoom, as I always am, to answer any of those things. You can always email me as well, and you might be able to reach me on Canvas too through discussions, but the better ways, email or Zoom, are good for me. All right, let's get into this tutorial. So I'm going to show you guys how to create your own fonts, maybe from scratch, or maybe you want to just alter an existing font. Now what I use myself is this program called Font Creator 11, which is really great but not free. So just want to show you that it exists and that there are a ton of options and flexibility here. So I can open up any TTF file, a true type file, so that's any existing font, and then alter it. If I double click, I can get all of the Bezier curves and adjust those things. I can adjust the size or the skew. There's a ton of options here for me. I could just draw my own font inside the program. That said, it does cost some money and it is somewhat complicated. Instead, we'll use a totally free service. It could cost if you wanted to do the professional version, but it's just called calligrapher.com. So if we go to Calligrapher, that's Calligrapher without an E, so it looks like this up at the top there. If we head to that website, we can sign up. It's totally free to sign up unless you want to do like very complicated fonts or create more than one font at a time. So if you're working on one font and then you decide you want to work on another one, you'll need to create multiple accounts unless you want to pay for it. If you do pay for it, I think it's like $8 or something, so it's not too terribly expensive. So once you go to the website and sign in, you should see something just like this, and it gives you some options to create templates and then upload those templates and turn them into fonts and stuff. What I went ahead and did for you is I created a couple of templates that are just under files on Canvas. If you don't want to create your own template, feel free to if you want to. But if you want to just use like a kind of standardized one that I've created for you, feel free to just grab mine. So you'll download this and you'll fill it out completely. So you could print it and actually write over the template and then take some stills of that template. You just snap some photos with your cell phone. If you do go this route, I would highly recommend that you download an app called a document scanner. That gives you like a high contrast. It looks like, you know, just writing instead of lots of grays and big files and stuff like that. But you just want to make sure that you take a picture of the template that has all four corners in it, and it has a little QR code that tells Calligrapher which numbers and letters are contained on the template. So you create your template and download it if you want. You can also use mine. There's a couple on there for you. One of them doesn't have letters visible and the other one does, so you can see kind of where the letters are actually supposed to go. So if you have something like a lowercase g or q, the descenders on the letters, you can see where those things are supposed to stop and where they begin and stuff like that. So if you're at all new to this, maybe the one that actually has the letters shown is the one for you. Now you can just use your pen to do it, but you can also use Photoshop, and that's kind of what we want to get into today. So I'm going to go ahead and load up Photoshop and pop in my calligrapher template. All right, so I just went ahead and clicked File, Open, and then navigated to the PDF. And when I do that, I can open up the PDF pages as if they're images. But I can only do one at a time, so I'll have to open it several times since there are 5 pages here. I'm just going to open up number 1 really quickly so I can show you how this works. All right, so there is our template. So what we want to do is we want to just use our horizontal type tool. We'll create a text box inside the exclamation point box area, and then we can put an exclamation point with any font of your choosing, but we'll find something that at least kind of closely matches what we're going for with our font. So in my case, maybe Brandon Grotesque makes sense. From here, though, we need to make it our own. So we have a few options, and probably the easiest option, well, you could use free transform tools, but if you did that, it's not really changing the font in any way that we couldn't already do inside Photoshop really, really easily, right? So if we typed everything out and then just stretched it, we could just stretch it from the original font. So that's not helping us too much. But what we could do is we could go into Edit, and then that puppet warp that we learned about last week, if I go ahead and press OK to turn it into a raster image, then all of a sudden I have some options. When I put some puppet pinpoints, I can stretch my the top part of my exclamation point, and maybe I could take the sides and expand those a little bit too. And that's probably way too much, so I'm getting these weird points on the side, but you get the idea. If that was what I wanted, some kind of like ink blot sort of typeface that I'm creating, then that's exactly what I'm doing, right? So that's the easy way to manipulate a font and turn it into your own. The harder way to do it is to kind of trace things with the pen tool or even like a brush, so that it is entirely your own. You put your exclamation point or whatever letters you want down first, and then just opacity that down, and then we'll create a new layer for our maybe brush, and then we will kind of paint in an approximate shape to what already existed. And then we can always manipulate it a little bit. So maybe I want to make it a little bit taller here. Let's go with that. Now, if you do use a brush for this, it's absolutely going to look illustrated. It's just a matter of fact. If you use the brushes, it's going to make whatever you create with the brushes look illustrated. So if you want an illustrated looking font, that's the way to do it. If you want something that looks much more like angular and like conventional, you'll want to use a pen. So if I just go ahead and delete that layer, and it's the same process, so we'll keep that opacity down here, and then we can use our pen tool to essentially trace the same thing that we have. We can make some adjustments along the way though. So if you're not familiar with the pen tool anymore, or like you just didn't use it from the point where I introduced it a very long time ago, all you have to do is click to create a point, click again to create your next point along the path, and then you can click and hold to create Bezier curves. So maybe we don't want that sharp angle in the middle there, so we'll kind of smooth that off a little bit. And when we complete our path, so when our last point touches our first point, we have some options to make a selection, which we did before, or make a mask, which we've done several times, or we can create a shape and we can just make that a shape. Not at all sure what happened with this extra item here, but we can take care of that. If we just rasterize this layer, we can always just erase anything that pops up that's extra. Very weird that it did that, but we have solutions for these things. So those are your three options inside Photoshop. You can also maybe clean up the stuff that you do, like illustrating by hand, which is always an option for you. So you could potentially do this entire project outside of Photoshop. So you print the templates and you draw all the lettering and then you upload it to Calligrapher. So let me show you what happens inside Calligrapher, because it's probably going to give you a little bit of trouble, especially if you do the analog way, the way outside of Photoshop. So I've created my template already. I want to upload it. So if I go into my fonts now, I have the option to upload template. So right along the top there, it says upload template. I will select a file, and then I'm just going to grab a template that I've already filled out here. So in my case, I just did numbers and all caps. In your case, you must do caps and lowercase and numbers. That's it. You don't have to do any kind of special characters or anything like that. I think there are a few in the original template, and if you just leave that blank, it's going to do the same thing as if you download a template without those things on it. All right, so we take a look at our letters and see how well it did. It looks okay, but maybe there's a couple of issues that we could clean up. So let me look at this number 1 real quick. So it doesn't look exactly right. So I'm going to go ahead and start by adding characters to my font. And they're all in there. But if I click on the number 1 now, I have some options to clean things up. Now, if you do it the analog way, you might have little dots from your scan or from your camera, and you definitely need to clean that stuff up, or you're going to have issues with like letter spacing, because it's going to think that there's a piece of 1 in this top corner. So then every time you put a 1, it's going to have an extra space there. But for me, all I need to do is like kind of fix up this this jagged edge, and we can do that just by clicking Edit Character and using the brushes. Now these are incredibly rudimentary. Don't think that you're getting anything close to Photoshop level, but they get the job done if you need to clean things up after they come into Calligrapher. There is also an eraser. You click the little trash can icon there, and you still use the same kind of brush, and you can erase parts of your image as well. Control Z won't do you any good here because we're in the web browser, so you actually have to click the undo button if you need that. There are different shapes here for different applications. Totally up to you what you use. When you're happy with your adjustments, you click Save and Close, and then that is applied to your font. So you can go back to your font and find the other letters that may be off, or may have some residual marks that you need to take care of. When everything looks good, you click Build Font, and it will create your font. You name it, so I'll call this Trevor's Font. And we click Build. And then we get a quick look at what our font looks like in action. This is what the spacing looks like. And then we can download it as either a TTF or an OTF. Chances are either one of these is going to work on both a Mac and a PC. It's a long time ago it didn't work that way, but today it's fine. So all you have to do is right click and go Save Link As, and you can save that on your hard drive or wherever you can find it easily. Now, if you have some issues with spacing, and you can see it here, chances are you can take care of that back in the font editor. So if you go back to my font, you can see all those letters. Maybe there's those residual dots that are causing this issue. Also, you can go under Edit Font Details, and you can change the spacing. So if it's like a spacing issue between every single letter, it's like a constant thing, you can adjust that through here. When you're happy with whatever changes you have, click Save, and then it's going to make those adjustments for you. Then when you click Build Font, I'll just call it My Font since it's a little bit quicker that way. We'll see now that my spacing is a little bit smaller, and now it's called My Font Regular, right? So this is all you have to do for this week. I know that the tutorial is short, but the actual creation of the font is kind of tedious. So put on some good music and spend a little bit of time drawing some letters. It's not exactly fun, but it is rewarding in the end when you have a nice font to type with. Now you can use this font, you can install this font really easily. You just click that TTF or OTF and then you'll get an option for installing a font. So I'll go ahead and do that real quick for you. If I click build font and it's called my font, sure, looks good. I'm going to go ahead and just click myfontregular.ttf. It's going to download. So my font regular, if I open this with Windows Font Viewer, and that should be the preset for you if you don't have like a font creator or something like that, then we can see our font. The only thing in this capitalized area is the T and then the numbers here. All I have to do from here is click install, and then it will be installed on my computer. I can use it now in Photoshop. I can use it in Word. I can use it anywhere so long as I'm opening this program on my computer. So that's the idea. You're going to create an OTF or a TTF, or you can have both. That's fine. And then you're going to attach that to a discussion on Canvas. So everyone will have access to everyone's fonts. So if you find that somebody has a font that works better for maybe your poster, you can reach out to them and ask, hey, can I use your font? And that's totally safe to do. You can always collaborate with others. You just can't use copyrighted material or fonts out of the box, right? So this is your opportunity to find something that may work for maybe a logo or some text on your poster or Netflix art. So that's it for this week. I hope you come up with some good ideas for your design project, and I'll be monitoring how you do with that on Canvas. Reach out to me if you have any questions, and as always, I will be available on Zoom every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m.